Welcome to the Word for 2021. Today we're in Joshua chapter 19. Now Joshua is a man worth studying. As we read about him, we understand that he was a worshiper, he was a warrior, he was a waiter, he was the assistant to Moses, and he wholeheartedly was a servant of God's. The first time that we see Joshua, Moses called him in Exodus chapter 17 verse 9 to be a general. He said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go and fight the Amalekites." Joshua, as he was fighting the Amalekites down in the valley below, Moses, Aaron, and Hur were on top of the mountain. As long as Moses was lifting his hands high, Joshua was winning the battle down below. But after a while, Moses' hands got tired, and so Aaron and Hur held his hands up until the battle below was won. We next find Joshua in chapter 24, verse 13. Now he is the aide of Moses. He goes up onto the mountain with Moses. Then in chapter 33, verse 11, Joshua, it says, his young aide, stayed at the tent of meeting after Moses returned to the camp. God would speak with Moses as a friend would speak with a friend, face to face. When Moses left, Joshua stayed behind. He stayed there at the tent of meeting. He wanted to be into God's presence. Then in Numbers chapter 13, Joshua and Caleb were part of the 12 spies that went in to the promised land and brought back a report. Joshua and Caleb, they were men of faith and they gave a good report. The other 10 spies gave a bad report and turned the whole nation against God. Then in Deuteronomy chapter 34, Joshua succeeded Moses as the leader of Israel. Now here in the book of Joshua, Joshua was charged to take Israel into the promised land and conquer Canaan. They crossed the Jordan miraculously. Joshua conquered Jericho, Ai, the southern and the northern kingdoms there in the promised land. And he controlled the giving out of the territories to the tribes. The land was divided into all the tribes, and Joshua oversaw that whole process. He was a man of faith, a man of courage, and a man of obedience. Now, he was not perfect because he also allowed himself to be deceived by the Gibeonites. So he wasn't perfect, but he was faithful to the Lord. So with all that Joshua was able to do, for all that he was, a worshiper, a general, an assistant to Moses, a spy, and a leader, he could have demanded special attention. He could have demanded special treatment or special consideration when the land was being given out. But as the allotment of the inheritances were given, he could have demanded first choice and the very best land that Canaan had to offer. But he was humble. He was a servant leader, and he waited till the very end. He waited till last to be given his portion. We read in chapter 19 of Joshua, verse 49, when they had finished dividing the land and its allotted portions, the Israelites gave Joshua, son of Nun, an inheritance among them. Devotional writer Wendy Blight said this, Joshua modeled true greatness, not as the world defines greatness. The world defines greatness as power, prestige, positions, possessions, and popularity. No, his greatness was about humility, about serving, waiting, and obeying. Joshua embodied exactly what Jesus said to his disciples in Matthew chapter 20, verses 25 to 28. This is what Jesus said to his disciples. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." God is watching, and God responds to humility, and he wants us to be servants. So allow Joshua to be the example for you and the example for me of what true greatness is all about. It's about humility and servanthood. It's about being a servant leader. Thank you for joining the Word for 2021.